Hey, and welcome back to Game Talk. I'm your host, Sam, and beyond today, I'm joined by Connor.
Hey, guys.
And Mike.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about Bungie. I think the last time we really talked about Bungie in a serious way on the show was when they were acquired by Sony for, I think, $6 billion, $6.2 billion, some amount around there. And
more than they were worth.
Way more than they were worth, and we'll talk about that. But I think it was it last week that this news broke? It's
was
very
recent. Yeah, it was like Friday or Thursday, I think. Yeah.
But anyway, Bungie announced mass layoffs, a restructuring, all around a negative downturn for Bungie, where they really don't have their stuff together.
Do you have an article in front of you for how severe the layoffs were? Like, was it 20%?
Yeah. So let's talk about it, right? So Bungie, before this restructuring, was 1,300 employees, which is just massive for context, right? That is a gigantic game studio.
Yeah.
That employee count was reduced from 1,300 to 850.
Wow.
So that is that's like reducing the number of employees by about a third.
Yeah. Wow. More than a third.
And so it's not all layoffs, right? So let's just lay the groundwork here. So
It was last Wednesday was their first layoff.
they laid off 220 people. They moved 155 others to Sony.
Oh, okay.
And they also are cutting out a separate group that will spin out to be a new game studio within Sony, presumably making first-party games. But
Okay.
Bungie itself, like the core team working on Destiny, has been cut down severely.
Destiny is now on maintenance mode, I do believe. It's done.
It certainly seems that way, which is a huge shame, and maybe that's where we can start, because Destiny, for the longest time, was seen as this insane success story, and it was for a while, but the live service model is just such a brutal model. You know, just because you have past success, it does not guarantee future success. And while the final shape critically was super acclaimed, it's actually rated as one of the highest rated games of this year so far, which is saying something because we've had a lot of really good games this year. It commercially did not meet their targets, right? So it actually commercially did even worse than Lightfall, which was pretty much a universally hated Destiny expansion. So it seems like they've really kind of lost their player base. They aren't winning new people.
Yeah, they shouldn't have been surprised by this. They should never have anticipated new players with an expansion like this because they have not, notoriously impossible game to get into as a new player.
Yeah, no, and that is certainly their biggest issue, and I think that is kind of what they're redirecting their focus to, like Mike said, maintenance mode, but also fixing the onboarding, trying to rebrand so you're not Destiny 2. You know, that's kind of a strange kind of jumping on point for a new player. But it's just a mess over there. And it's sad to see, especially because from the outside looking in, it really seemed like the final shape demonstrated that Bungie still had it. They still have it as a game studio.
Did you play the final shape?
I played a little bit of it, and what I played of it was enjoyable.
Everything I've heard is that it's excellent.
But the problem is that it's just not selling. You know, I think Destiny is kind of old news at this point.
The last expansion, I don't remember its name. Was
Lightfall.
Lightfall.
I think it was Lightfall.
Lightfall burnt a lot of people.
So the problem with me is, like, I heard all these good things about the final shape, and I wanted to play it, but I was so burned by not even Lightfall specifically, just as a person trying to pick up. I've tried twice now, maybe 3 times, to pick up Destiny 2, and you just enjoy it fundamentally, and like the gunplay is fun and all, but I can tell that there's so much more to the game, and I don't know how to get to it. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's wild seeing its competitor in the market right now, Warframe, having the better onboarding process despite being 11 years old.
Warframe, it was excellent. I've played Warframe twice, and both times it was very easy to get into and feel like I was doing it right.
And they're adding more to it too. They're literally adding lines to the game that'll tell you, "Hey, complete star chart nodes, and we'll give you more content very slowly."
That's awesome.
and it gives you a path to go. Like here's how you access all this content.
I always thought Destiny felt better to play, but yeah, Warframe was easier to get into.
Yeah.
And it was also free to play sooner. Is Destiny 2 free to play now? The base
It
game?
is free to play now, but the
Okay.
problem is you really need expansions to do anything.
Oh, maybe that's why I didn't know what to do. I never bought any expansions.
Yeah, it's a live service game that requires you to pay $40 every year or so to get more game, and that just doesn't work anymore in live service.
Well, so here's my problem with Destinies, and this is just one facet of the Bungie discussion, I think, but it is worth having. Ever since they switched to the seasonal model, that was such a turnoff to me, because that was them saying that unless you are fully invested in Destiny, right, like always playing every season, you're just going to miss stuff. And for most people, that was a huge, okay, then I'll just find something else to play, because unless you're 100% in on Destiny, which, again, there are people like that, but not enough to sustain a company, then that business model just doesn't make sense. There were major story developments that happened over the course of a season, and none of those events are accessible ever again after the season's over. And suddenly, all these major characters are in new places, people coming into new expansions, having not played the previous seasons, are given recaps to catch people up, but that's just not good enough. If your main story is told through season-only content, that's a huge detriment to the longevity of your game.
It's one of the least popular things Sea of Thieves did as well, was a lot, and granted, the Sea of Thieves story is not worth experiencing in my opinion. It's like kind of fun, but nothing special. But that's how they tell it, is through these 2-week events, and once they're done, they're gone forever. You can't experience them. And it's the most common complaint I hear in that community.
No, I mean, if I look back at my history with Destiny, and like I've said before on the show, I was super into Destiny 1, was super into Destiny 2 for a while, but I can point to them switching to that seasonal model being the turning point for me, where I was just like, okay, I'm not as devoted to this game anymore. There was just too much else to play, and Destiny was just asking too much of me to really keep up with it.
Yeah, I mean, who has the time? Your entire market can't be people in high school. It's or unemployed or whatever. And if you have a job, it's hard to keep up with stuff like that, or start dating or pick up a new hobby. You can't keep up with your Destiny anymore.
Adding to this, Bungie was actually almost picked up by Microsoft, but at the time, Microsoft saw that Bungie was just burning cash over and over and over again and decided not to.
How did they see that? I don't understand how they saw that and Sony didn't, though.
Okay, so maybe we can pivot the discussion to talk about this acquisition, because I think this is fascinating, and Bungie went for sale, and obviously everyone was interested. But it's Bungie, right? You don't really have to qualify that. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Destiny was huge, and Sony was in a panic mode kind of position, because Microsoft has already gone in, they've acquired Bethesda, they're looking to acquire, or have acquired, I think, at this point, Activision Blizzard, or at least the deal has been made public. And Sony is thinking, okay, we need something to compete with this, and our biggest weakness is our multiplayer offerings. And they saw Bungie was for sale, they went for it, and they vastly overpaid for Bungie. Yeah. $6.2 billion for Bungie. In no universe is Bungie worth that price tag, but Bungie was able to, and I say Bungie, but it's largely Pete Parsons, their CEO, who is responsible for this, but basically oversold Bungie to Sony, saying that, oh, we can do this, and this. The employees, meanwhile, at Bungie are like, what are you talking about? Sony takes the bait, purchases Bungie. Bungie incubates all these new projects, tons and tons of new projects, splintering the company in all these directions.
I think it was since Bungie was bought at the end of January in 2022, right at like weeks after Sony announced they were trying to acquire Activision. It had to have been Sony panicking. It had to have been a panic buy. There's no other way that Bungie would be worth $3.6 billion. Because Bungie is not worth half of Bethesda's ZeniMax. Like, there's no way. No way Bethesda's worth only 50% more than Bungie. Like, Bungie has one title that's currently on market, actively sustaining, and it might print money, but it doesn't print Bethesda money.
Anymore. It doesn't print money anymore.
It doesn't print ZeniMax money, you know?
Well, I'm sure at one point it did, right? But that's the problem with this model, is that not everyone can sustain that forever. I mean, there are exceptions like Fortnite, Apex Legends, but
I don't even want to give them that. I think they could have preserved it forever if they bothered. So many people I know have tried to get into Destiny and failed. There is a clear unforced error here that killed Destiny, in my opinion. It is not like the cruelty of the open market.
No, I mean, there's a lot of factors, right? I think that's probably the biggest one, right? The onboarding issue. But the other issue was internal to Bungie. Their CEO starting all these projects that, quite frankly, the employees knew they couldn't deliver on.
Is this dude liable for fraud or anything? For lying about their capability in this sale? I would think.
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, but they attempted all these projects, right? And that really split Bungie's attention in all these different directions. And that took away from Destiny, that took away from their ability to really perform anymore. And suddenly there's an implosion where Sony is saying, hey, you're not making money, you're hemorrhaging money, what are you doing? We spent all this money for you. And
the Reaper, again, comes to collect to the studio, just like it did in Microsoft.
But the crappy part about this is, right, I said $6 billion earlier, that was a mistake. It was I think you said it right, Mike, $3.6 billion.
$3.6 billion.
Pete Parsons has generational wealth now. His kids and his kids' kids are going to be rich forever, basically.
He's been buying classic cars left and right. He spent like $14 million, I think, in the past 2 years.
2.4.
Oh, only 2.4. Okay, that's a much smaller number, but it's
much
still
smaller number, but
it is likely more money than I'll make in the course of my career.
Apparently, I just saw an article. They were gonna pull the trigger regardless of the final shape. Like, even if the final shape sold gangbusters, they were gonna pull the trigger.
Laying off all these people, you mean?
Yeah, it was bound to happen.
So Bungie was already in this insalvageable position, right? My point being that Pete Parsons, the man largely responsible, and according to Jason Schreier's interviewing, he interviewed anonymous Bungie employees who lay the blame on Pete Parsons. He's not going to see any of the consequences. He's set.
No,
he can just launch himself out of the company and live the rest of his life in a lavish way if he wants. And the employees are the ones paying the price, right? So many of them fired, so many of them refactored into Sony or a new studio or whatever. And now way fewer people are on Destiny. Most of the focus is being placed on Marathon now, which I know it's Bungie, right?
But it can't. There's no way.
I don't. I mean,
it'll probably it'll feel great to play. Bungie has never made a shooter that didn't feel good to play.
But the kicker is releasing a live service game in 2023 is the biggest gamble you can possibly make.
It is Bungie, right? But Bungie has been cut down by a third now.
Yeah.
You know, it's
at this point, the battle lines and trenches are so deep you can see the center of the earth through them. There's no way you're getting into the live service trenches that easily.
So they knew, the executives knew months ago that these layoffs were going to happen, right? Is that what you're saying from these interviews, or?
These interviews with these employees, they saw the direction Bungie was going in, and they largely blamed Pete Parsons for making promises they knew couldn't be kept.
Yeah.
Okay. Was it you, Mike, who said that they knew that the layoffs were going to happen before the final shape? It was already set in stone.
Yeah, the Bungie upper management had it set in stone because Sony wanted money. Sony wanted a return on their investment because they spent $3.6 billion too much on a company that's burning money faster than it can make it.
This is why game developers need to unionize. That's the sort of a union will not necessarily protect you from layoffs, but it can protect you from surprise layoffs that management has known about for a long time.
I think the biggest reckoning we're facing now is game company gets bought up by bigger game company. They spend way too much money on said company and start firing staff because suddenly you're on the hook for $68 billion for like Microsoft.
These are not financially responsible decisions being made.
They're hoping it causes growth, and then it backfires, and now they have to lay off 3/4 of their workforce because they spent $60 billion too much for a company.
I just have to think, like, what was the point? What was the point? They never had to branch off into this direction in the first place. They were suffering from success prior to their live service pivot. But it was just pure greed and I guess fear out of Microsoft potentially threatening
Sony
them.
Was scared.
That made them go into this direction, and it was a disaster. I mean, that's the only way to put it.
And I think I can't. I don't have it on record. I don't want to go back and listen, but I think I said back then that a live service pivot could prove disastrous.
Oh yeah, I think.
I mean, we all said that. Everyone agreed, who is even remotely familiar with Sony, and I guess the larger kind of market. It's easy to see, it was easy to see, especially because Sony studios are really good at single player offline games. And when you take all those people and be like, hey, make these surefire hit multiplayer live service games, what do you think is going to happen?
What I don't understand is anyone who responsibly deals with money knows that you want a diverse portfolio. That's what you want to do when you're investing. And Sony took their entire portfolio, or at least this is what it feels like, took everyone and said, live service is what we do now. Dipping a toe, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
The craziest thing to me is that Naughty Dog, right? Naughty Dog was making a multiplayer Last of Us game, which originally it was just supposed to be a mode in The Last of Us 2, which is fine.
Yeah.
But when you devote arguably your most important, biggest studio to something that they have never done before, that is clearly not their expertise, and that they chose to move away from when faced with the choice of, hey, are we going to be a live service studio, or are we going to continue our path of making really good single-player games? They made the choice of continuing on that path.
Thank goodness. And
we've seen multiple live service games fail at Sony. I suspect Concord will be another one when it comes out. And Bungie themselves, one of their roles within Sony as a company was to oversee the production of a lot of these live service games, because they presumably had the most experience. Not presumably, they really did have the most experience. Destiny was a success for the longest time.
Yeah.
But from word of Bungie, a lot of these projects got killed. And now Bungie themselves is being downsized heavily. So it just seems like several years of wasted effort, several billions of dollars of wasted money in a direction that Sony was never really meant to go in. So once again, I hope that Sony has learned their lesson and they kind of revert back in the later stages of the PlayStation 5 life cycle and going into the PS6 to their bread and butter, what they're good at. Yes, I get it that you want a diverse catalog of games, but
that's not what they did. They didn't do a diverse catalog. They went all in on this bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, maybe devote like one or two of your first parties to this.
It could have been Bungie. They bought Bungie. Bungie should have been the live service team.
Yeah, but they wanted more, right? They wanted half of their first parties to be live service games, which is that's
just insanity.
What are you doing?
A horrible idea when you have this thing that is working for you.
Yeah. That working really well for you. That's the craziest thing. It reminds me of the jump from PS2 to PS3, where Sony was on top of the world, everything was going their way, and they just make a weird, unforced error.
Yeah.
And have to spend a whole generation recovering from it. It basically feels like the same thing from PS4 to PS5.
I don't know if I think it's as bad as the PS3.
I mean, it's definitely not as bad financially. PS5 is doing very well.
PS5's still getting good games, too.
And getting good games, but it's just frustrating from a perspective of Sony could have taken that momentum even further from the PS4. And
I agree with that.
Totally just didn't at all. It's basically the same. The PS5 is a PS4 2. And
at best.
It didn't have to be this way if they had just really stuck to their first-party guns, I think.
Yeah, because they're still just not... We're very deep in the PS5, and it's still... I've seen a few of them very cheap on Facebook, and I've thought, I do want to play Spider-Man. I do want to play God of War.
Yeah.
But there's just not one, I could play God of War on my PS4 right now if I wanted to. And there's just not that library that, like, I waited 5 years and I bought a PS4 and I had Bloodborne, I had Uncharted, I had Spider-Man, I had a long laundry list of games that I could go back and play. I don't remember them all off the top of my head right now, but there were a bunch that I really enjoyed.
But yeah, I mean, that's Bungie in the larger context of Sony, but I'm kind of worried just for Bungie themselves. Now they're really under the gun.
Oh,
could you imagine what happens if Marathon bombs? You know,
yeah, no, they're cooked. Marathon is, in my mind,
succeed.
They're gone already. And if that happens to not be the case, that will be a treat, because I just don't see Marathon succeeding, because those live service games are such a dice roll, a gamble.
They are.
And even if it's an excellent game, that doesn't mean that it's going to do well. And hell, the way things seem right now, even if it's an excellent game that does well, that doesn't necessarily save Bungie here.
Yeah, which is wild. We always had Destiny and Destiny 2 was always a story of ups and downs. I don't know if you guys remember, but when Destiny 1 launched, it was in a horrible state. Like, everyone was ripping it to shreds. And then a couple expansions in, it was fantastic, right? And then Destiny 2 launches and it's underwhelming. And people are like, oh, Bungie never learned their lesson. And then a couple expansions happen. And then it was great. And then another couple expansions happen and it was terrible again. So it always is kind of this weird sine wave with Bungie and Destiny. And that is in contrast to things like Fortnite, which you only ever hear success about. You only ever hear good things about.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, we're not people that are super plugged into the Fortnite community, and I'm somebody who doesn't care that much and is always having fun, but there are absolutely updates that come out and have a lot of controversy around them. Like, I actually don't think Fortnite's in a great place right now.
Well, so let me, I guess, rephrase what I'm saying here. With Fortnite, it's okay because it's just an update. But with Destiny, it's not, because it's an expansion that will carry the game for the next 6 months or so.
Right, and Fortnite, wait a month, and it'll be different. Yeah.
Fortnite's way more agile, and I hate myself for saying that, but
no, it's true.
It feels true, yeah.
Like, I don't like the Fortnite map right now, but give it a few months and they're probably going to change it and I'm going to be back in and really enjoying it.
Yeah.
And even in the past month alone, like the car meta was really fun to me. And then competitive players whined. We did an episode about it and they changed it. The cars are terrible now, which is like super unfun. But again, you know, that's okay. They'll release another fun thing in a month or two and I'll be back. Yeah. Destiny doesn't have that.
Yeah, Destiny relies on their big landmark expansions to draw people in, and it's not agile. You can't adapt if you rely on one or two big expansions or big story beats a year. It's not going to bring people back to the game.
It also, the Fortnite has a story, but not a ton of people care about it. And leaning on a story is a huge liability, in my opinion, for a live service game.
Because
that means one bad story, people will not like it, and a lot of those people will not come back because you can't just undo it like you can a gameplay change.
Yeah. So it is sad that it seems like the Destiny experiment is maybe not ending in failure, but it's not the rousing success I'd want it to be. And that statement goes right along with the fact that there is no Destiny 3, right? So for the longest time, I speculated that Bungie was actually building Destiny 3 for a while now behind the scenes, and that's just not true, which is really sad to see. I mean, that was made clear with this news of the cutbacks and the current state of Bungie, but it seemed for the longest time that Bungie was working on something Destiny-related in the background.
They were, weren't they? There was a payday or something?
Jason Schreier revealed that it was Payback. Which a lot of people suspected to be Destiny 3. It might have been Destiny 3. We'll never know for sure. It seems to be some sort of Destiny spin-off at the very least that would maybe live alongside or succeed Destiny 2, but that's totally scrapped now too. So, like Mike said, Destiny is in full kind of maintenance mode, and according to Jason Schreier's reporting, they are focusing on player retention and new player onboarding, which I don't really understand, right? If Destiny is really kind of not the focus anymore, what is the point of new player onboarding? Granted, there's a lot of stuff there in Destiny 2. There's a lot of raids. There's a lot of content.
Are they going to let me play the old story content if I onboard now? Like, what are we talking about?
You missed the entire bit of Destiny 2. The whole story that Destiny 2 launched with is no longer available content. It's gone. Yeah. It's missing. You can't use it.
It's just... Isn't it strange to you guys that, like, they're saying that, okay, we're pivoting focus off of Destiny, but at the same time we want to bring in new players? That doesn't... Yeah,
it doesn't make a ton of sense.
Who would want to actually play Destiny now? Now that there's not going to be any major expansions.
I mean, if they actually fix the onboarding experience, there's a bunch of... there's still content there I'd like to see. I'd still like to play those raids or whatever, but...
Yeah, so I suppose that's why they're focusing on that, but the bulk of Bungie's manpower is now focused on Marathon, so... I don't know. Marathon, to me, I think it's fine, and I'm interested because it's Bungie, but that's the extent of it. Right? Nothing they've really revealed about it so far has really grabbed me, except for the fact that I know Bungie makes really good gameplay. That's it.
Yeah. I'm curious what the alternate universe where Bungie is still making Halo, what that looks like.
I don't know. I think it would be...
I don't know either, because like, if you asked me years ago, I would say Halo has better campaigns, but now I'm not even sure of that.
No, I mean, Destiny had the highest highs and the lowest lows, and I think the highest highs were better than Halo's campaigns.
Okay.
That might be controversial, but
like better than the
stuff like the Taken King, Shadowkeep? Was it Shadow? No, not Shadowkeep. The one before that. There's so many expansions now that I can't remember them all. But
I never bought any of the expansions, but the vanilla Destiny 2 I've played, I was way better, in my opinion. In pretty much every regard, other than knowing what to do, was better than Halo Infinite's campaign.
Yeah, I mean, Halo Infinite's campaign, it's not the highest bar to clear.
No, but it's the one we're talking about.
But here's the point. With the final shape, Bungie rather, proved that they still had it.
Yeah.
They can still make a really good campaign. They could still make a really good expansion. They can still do it. It's just that they weren't able to convince enough people, and now... Who knows what happens? I think there is a world where Marathon does really well, kind of rejuvenates Bungie, and then maybe there's more stuff coming down the pipeline for Destiny. But that's a very slim chance, in my opinion, at this point. But
I agree.
It could happen. But it's just sad to see, man, because Bungie, I mean, Bungie's one of the most legendary names in this industry, and to see them kind of floundering like this isn't great to see.
I just can't imagine being a AAA developer anywhere right now.
I can't imagine being a AAA.
Stress. I mean, indie has its own stresses, obviously, but the AAA studios seem much safer than the AAA studios.
Yeah, especially because now, I mean, Marathon is kind of their do or die moment, which is crazy to say for someone as big as Bungie, but they need Marathon to be a success to really survive now.
I just don't... Gaming is such a weird space. Obviously, layoffs happen in many industries, but it does really seem like video game executives are particularly insensitive and willing to throw their employees under the bus.
Yeah.
Even more so than other fields.
I think...
Or particularly detached from their product, maybe.
Yeah, it feels very predatory the way AAA kind of functions.
Yeah. Because I just don't know of any other field where people are this constantly afraid of layoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, afraid of layoffs and, I guess, weirdly underpaid to their other software developer
underpaid,
peers, right?
If they have to be in the office, they're also just underpaid often for the area they have to live in. Like, a lot of them are making six figures, but a lot of them also have to live in Silicon Valley, where six figures
Seattle,
is like not very much money.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, mid six figures is still a good bit of money there, but like low six figures is not necessarily a ton of money to live in Seattle with.
No, it's not. It just straight up isn't. Yeah, I don't know. I hope for the best for Bungie. I mean, Bungie holds a very special place in my heart for both Halo and Destiny, right? I have such fond memories with both of those games. And I will be there playing Marathon. I at least owe Bungie a shot, you know? They've earned that much from me. So I will play Marathon and give my honest opinion on it. And I hope for their sake that it's great.
I intend to give it a shot too. I'm intrigued so far with the ideas, so.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe one day the fire of Destiny can be lit again. But until then, I think this is a pretty sad end for a very ambitious project.
Yeah, I just don't know. Destiny 3 is a hard sell. I would rather them just call like a new thing Destiny and keep doing it. Like,
yeah, it's really annoying how their game is Destiny 2.
They're in such
they
a
really
weird
should
spot
have
too.
called the whole thing Destiny.
Because I, an outsider, am sitting here thinking, God, it needs a complete reboot. Like, there's no way you're getting me into this without a complete reboot. But all of the current players are sitting there with their unlockables that they've spent, 8 years getting or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're saying, if you reboot this, I'm done. We're not doing this again.
Right, yeah. It's the choice every kind of MMO live service developer has to make at some point, where you have to either choose your existing audience or risk it all for a new audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally, as someone who has put hundreds and hundreds of hours into Destiny, I say reboot it all. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready for that to happen.
Yeah.
It's just too much of a mess right now, in my opinion. Because
if they rebooted it and went free to play at launch, I for sure install a Destiny 3 and give it a chance.
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, in my opinion, the gameplay is too good to just ignore.
Yeah.
It just feels incredible, even after all these years.
I want to experience those raids so bad. They really do seem like I've missed something.
That's quite literally peak gaming. There are very few things in video games to me that match a Destiny raid. So, and again, that's just so sad. If is the final shape raid the final raid ever?
Probably.
I mean, it kind of makes sense lore wise. It was very much the conclusion to Destiny's big story that started when Destiny 1 came out. But I mean, there's nothing quite like those raids, so...
Yeah. It's just very unfortunate to see a titan of live service get eaten alive by its own hubris.
Yeah.
Hubris, yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. Yeah, and this is the second mass layoff that Bungie had within a year, I believe.
Oh, really?
Because, I think, October 31st, 2023. Bungie cut around 100 jobs. So definitely not the insane gutting that we're getting right now, but a pretty big mass layoff, right? 100 jobs isn't nothing. So I guess we can speculate on the new studio being spun off from some of the Bungie staff. That is a little interesting to me. I wonder if that will be another sort of multiplayer effort, or will they kind of join the Sony first-party pantheon and make a single-player game from a new IP or something like that?
Well, are they, was it Sony that was trying to spin up some AA studios recently, or was that Microsoft?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I read something about that, but I can't remember where, so I cannot elaborate, unfortunately. But I do miss more frequent AA games. AA games are good for everyone, in my opinion, because they...
Yeah, especially as the definition of AAA now means basically
explodes.
A 5 to 6 year waiting period between games, which is just too much.
I miss a game series that I could expect every 2 to 3 years that was going to do something weird every time, stuff like that. Or even not a series, but just a studio that puts out a weird game every 2 or 3 years.
It's crazy how far away we are from that, because I look back as Uncharted as the golden example. Where we got like Uncharted 1, 2, 3, right? Boom, 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 one after the other, each masterful quality. We also got The Last of Us in there. The pace at which these games came out was just... That's the pace AAA should be at, right? 2 to 3 years, not 5 to 6, which is just... That's almost a console generation.
We're getting 1 or 2 good AAA games from a studio a generation, which is not how it used to be.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, it's only one. I mean,
I mean, the only company that used to do that is Nintendo. Nintendo's always like, you're getting one 3D Mario per console. You're getting one Zelda, probably, maybe two. You're getting one Mario Kart. You're getting one Smash Bros. And they pretty much stuck to that, to their credit, but...
I definitely believe for Nintendo, though, I don't think it's a case of this game took 6 years to develop. I do think that's the case for like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, whatever.
Zelda.
But if they really wanted to, they could make a new Smash sooner than once a generation. I think that's just their kind of cadence that they've set for those kinds of games.
Yeah, I mean, they did once. They gave us 2 Mario Galaxies on the Wii.
Yeah.
So they have done it before. They just don't typically want to.
Yeah. Unlike these other studios, unlike non-Nintendo studios, I'd say, like these games are actually taking, 5 to 6 plus years to develop, which is just crazy. Imagine working that long on one game.
Imagine working for 5 years and then it gets canceled, which is a thing that has been happening a lot recently.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That would be soul crush. I mean, to me, I've worked on games. I've worked on a game that I released commercially that took me 2.5 years. And after doing that, I sat down and ran the numbers on how many of those I had in me in a lifetime, in a career, and was dissatisfied with the number. And then, of course, I sat around and wasted 6 years not making games at all because I found it disheartening. But that's beside the point. People who are in the industry, if I'm doing that math on a 6 to 10 year game development cycle,
you only have a few games.
Yeah, you only get to make a few. You almost don't get to work on enough projects to really get good at it, like in the same way that I think you would if you were making one every couple years. I think finishing something is a skill, and they're just not getting to do it very often. And
you finish a game once every 6 years, you work for 30 years, you get 3 games a career.
Yeah.
Which, that can't be like good for your mental state as a creative, right?
And if one of them sucks...
if one of them doesn't do well... Yeah, you might as well.
A quarter of my
It's easy to see how you can get jaded,
Yeah.
Really jaded as a game developer.
No, I'd want out. I don't think I could do it.
That's
6 years.
6 years is a long time for a game. And if we keep our pace, it's only going to get longer, where you're going to get a game a career in like
on top of that,
30 years.
I don't know if this is true in games, but in tech, a lot of people job hop every 2 years.
Yeah.
And so you're only through 3 complete teams in the course of one game. I don't think that's as common in games, though.
Speaking of job hopping, though, that brings up another point, right, where Sony paid billions of dollars for Bungie, and a large part of their compensation was this retention plan for these employees, right? So they were being paid all these lavish retention bonuses. Like Bungie employees were making bank.
Really?
To just stay at Bungie and not be poached by another company because they value that live service experience so much. And now with these firings, a lot of that money is evaporating too. So these people that were at Bungie that were promised these extra payments and stuff are not getting them because they were let go. So it's just a sort of huge mess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it was just an error buying Bungie, that it's not a good fit with what Sony's trying to do. And now we're seeing the consequences of all that. So
yeah.
All right. We have any last words for Bungie? They're still going to be alive, but you know what I mean.
Rest in peace.
Yes. They're not dead yet.
Not dead yet, yeah. All right. I think, Connor, you mentioned you have a lot of games. Do you want to...
I got 2 games.
List one off here.
The first one's quick. I played a Super Mario World ROM hack called a Plumber For All Seasons, I think it's called. Let me get this title right. A Plumber For All Seasons. And it is not a Kaizo hack or anything, which is something that's always kind of turned me off of Super Mario World ROM hacks, is that you're always hearing about the super difficult Kaizo stuff.
Yeah.
But this is just a really... And I think I even mentioned this in the Discord. This is a platformer that is Super Mario World. It plays exactly like Super Mario World, but I think all of the visuals except Mario, like even the UI, it's all completely original to this game. And it's some of the most, perhaps the most gorgeous I've ever seen running on a Super NES. And this is something that runs on real hardware. And I think the visual spectacle is a lot of it, but it's just like a really funny, idea. It's what if you could, like, I think the title sequence is like, what if you could spend an entire year with your friend Mario? And it is just the same island. You go around it for all 4 seasons. And the levels do have unique designs, but it's the same themes over and over, but in a different season. And yeah, they're unique levels. But it's just really well made, really competent. I think Super Mario World ROM hacks might be something I get into if there's more to find of this quality level, because it is just gorgeous. I posted some screenshots, I think, in the Discord in a game discussion, I think, if you guys would want to look at it. But it is really pretty, really fun to play, and it is more challenging, at least than modern Mario. I haven't played Super Mario World in a very long time, so it may be just on par with Super Mario World, but it is a lot harder than something like Super Mario Wonder.
Yeah. I
saw the game over screen many times, and I'm on the final level right now and haven't beaten it yet. And I probably will beat the final level this time, because I'm not convinced that I can. It's quite hard.
So does the level design kind of hold up to the name Mario, I guess? Yeah,
honestly. I think it's really good. A couple of times there were like difficulty spikes that rubbed me as like, you did not have enough playtesters to like kind of refine this. But other than the difficulty, just the general design of it feels great to play. It just felt like I was playing a Mario game. It was really good.
Yeah, that's super high praise.
Yeah.
You said they were like shifting seasons, but like the same levels?
It's not the same levels, no. It's similar ideas, but with different seasons.
Okay.
So like similar themes.
That kind of reminds me of like Banjo-Kazooie's final level.
Yeah.
Click. What was it, Mike? You know, Click Clock
Wood, maybe? I don't know. I never finished Banjo-Kazooie, I don't think.
But it's like every season you have a plains level, you have a beach level, you have a water level, you have a cave level, you have a boo house, you have a castle, and I think there's like one other, maybe a forest level, but that's pretty much it. And each of those are interpreted through the lens of a season for a completely different level. The design is not reused at all.
Okay. Yeah, so what they did in Banjo-Kazooie, which you won't know, Connor, because you probably didn't get that far. But the final level in Banjo-Kazooie, it had 4 seasons. And depending on the season, the level changed in different ways, which was kind of really creative. So
kind of knocked off my favorite game of all time, for Spectrum, a little bit, maybe.
Right, yeah.
Ripped off, yeah.
Yeah.
The game of the year 2018.
2018, wow, that was
a while ago.
Don't get me started. It is a console generation ago since I've released a game.
Yeah. All right, Mike, what are you playing?
I think I've been grinding. Well, no, I talked about this a couple episodes ago. I think it was the me and Connor episode, but I finally Linkito finally came out, if you remember.
Yeah, that sounded really fun.
Yeah, I pretty much finished it, and the game has required me to use my brain in ways that I've never had to in a while. It definitely scratches that engineering itch that I've had since I've left college.
Can you describe it again real quick, just in case?
It is a wire-based logic puzzle game that uses electrical logic to solve puzzles. So,
like circuitry kind of stuff?
It's circuitry based.
It's on Steam.
Yeah, it's on Steam. It came out 2 weeks ago now.
Okay.
So
yeah, that one might be a scoop for me.
I played it on stream last Wednesday, and I think I got to the final chapter and quit there.
Is there still a demo? Do you know?
Yes, there's still a demo.
Okay.
Demo's still up. It's only $15, so it's not really that much. But I've been having fun with it. Solving puzzles and using my brain to solve these little circuit logic puzzles is always a fun time. Plus, it has full integration with like Arduino and everything.
Really? So you can like do real circuitry stuff with it?
Yeah,
kinda?
You could use the game to do real things. Like,
that's dope.
Its level editor is very robust. I haven't played around with it, but there's a lot of things that you can use that level editor for. I know there's a bonus level that requires me to use these camera objects that can capture a specific point of a level to steer a little robot around through hazards, but only through these 2 TV monitors. And I have to unhook and rehook them to hook them up to one of the 4 camera feeds as I do the puzzle.
This is kind of interesting. The minimum required storage is 1 gigabyte. The recommended storage available is 5 gigabytes.
Yeah.
What does having more storage space do for this game? I guess that's maybe for the level editor.
Yeah, probably for the level editor.
That's just a curiosity. This is a good looking game.
It is.
I am gonna.
There's
have
one
to check
guy
this out.
too.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love an auteur.
After solving the ARG that he did for the demo to get that Discord role, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
So it has Twitch integration too. I'm just not sure how that works, but
Oh, you got to check that out.
yeah, I'll have to look into it.
Usually I'm not a puzzle games kind of guy. It takes a really good puzzle game to suck me in. So
Same, but this it looks like worth checking out to me.
That's all I have to say.
What have you been playing?
Yeah, I haven't been playing anything. I was at a friend's, well, one of my closest friends, he from like middle school. Yeah, middle school. Went over to his place in Kansas City this past weekend, so I was spending time with him. We do have this tradition where whenever we hang out, we like shoot a dumb movie on YouTube. So that has been shot and is currently in the editing process. So it'll come out and that'll be fun. But have not been playing anything.
Okay, you're welcome to cede your time to me. The other game I played this week is I did another playthrough of Super Mario Odyssey, which I have not played basically at all since it came out. But
I was not expecting you to say that.
No, I've been in a Mario mood. We're due a I suspect originally a 3D Mario was going to come out this year with the Switch 2 probably. Most of the time when Nintendo launches a console, it's got a Mario game.
I think it's done and they're holding it personally.
I think so too. I think it'll be a launch title. But anyway, I was hankering for it. And usually when I want a 3D Mario game, I go back to Sunshine. That's always been my go-to. This time I went back to Odyssey and I played it very differently from the first time I played it. This time I was just like breezing through it, just doing story progression. Not a good way to play Super Mario Odyssey. Cannot recommend anyone ever do that. The game is fun, obviously. That game is always fun to play. The controls are excellent.
Yeah.
And no one can play through that final sequence without a grin on their face. I'm just going to spoil it. It's a 7-year-old game at this point. You're playing as Bowser. You're on the moon. All of that. Impossible. The music, everything. Impossible to play that without a grin. But it is missing that special... I think on a first playthrough, Odyssey beats Sunshine every single day. But returning to Sunshine feels like returning to Isle Delfino. It feels like going to a place I've been, enjoying it again, going on this vacation and everything. All of those vibes are really good. Same way Super Mario 64 feels like returning to Peach's Castle. Not having a hub world hurts Super Mario Odyssey really, really badly, in my opinion. It just doesn't have that sense of place. You never, if you're just playing through Odyssey, through the story, you're never in a kingdom for more than like 30 minutes. Like you really just never develop any attachment to these places. That might be an exaggeration, but it feels genuinely, by the time I had finished the story beats that happen in a kingdom, if I did any moons on the side at all on the way there, I have enough moons to move on to the next place. Only a few of the moons, or only a few of the kingdoms really feel developed in that way. Like New Donk City is the one that comes to mind. New Donk City you explore a lot of in that time, but I didn't see hardly any of Sand Kingdom playing through the game this way. I missed a huge part of Lake Kingdom. Just didn't have a reason to go to it. Seaside Kingdom, I didn't go underwater at all. It just, and Ice Kingdom, I pretty much did the race and left. Just a lot of it. It's a game that you should really play. It's not a game that's very good because the best parts of Odyssey are exploring and finding moons everywhere. I didn't do any of that. It feels very weird to return to it because I don't want 100% it again. Because I never do. I 100%. Like I never 100% Sunshine when I go back to it because that game is miserable to 100%. I just play through to the credits, and that's a pretty enjoyable experience in Sunshine and in 64. It's just really not enough in Odyssey, which is weird. I don't know how to replay this game. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do 500 moons, which is what it takes to get Darker Side. That's the next reasonable conclusion. But that's a lot. That's a lot of playtime for replaying a game.
Yeah, I mean, I personally never even... I don't think I got that far. I don't think I got 500 moons. Yeah.
You should do that. So. That is the time that it is acceptable to drop Odyssey, in my opinion. Yeah. If you didn't see Darker Side, you really didn't finish the game. There are 830, I think, unique moons. And I think it is worth doing 830 moons. I did it, and I really enjoyed it. But Darker Side is where the game actually kind of ends.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm just one to never really finish platformers. That's just crazy. Kind of my MO, right? And so Mario 64, I played through the end credits, but I never got every single star.
And I think that's fine in 64. Yeah.
Sunshine, I never even finished, I'm pretty sure.
You didn't miss that much. The final parts of Sunshine are not that good. The thing about Sunshine I love, and I wish Nintendo would return to this idea, is that Isle Delfino is really... Because I think Sunshine and Odyssey are the two most similar collectathon Mario games.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, I mean, they're both... Every location is a place that has NPCs, and they feel like a place that exists without the player. No other Mario game has that, really. I also think they have the two best controls. I think Sunshine wins out for controls just barely, and it's definitely worth... There's an argument that Odyssey wins in that. Mm-hmm. But those are the two... 64, they're not really places. Bob on Battlefield has a pretty strong sense of place, but other than it, they really don't.
They're just geometry.
But Sunshine has the strongest sense of place. Like, you can literally see the rest of the island from every level. Mm-hmm. And so it does feel like you're just exploring this one island that is interconnected. And I'd love for them to come back to that idea with maybe a more Bowser's Fury approach, where it is just one open area with levels.
I suspect that's what we're going to get, but...
I hope so. But I do wish Bowser's Fury... I actually played a little bit of that too, but only like an hour of it. And I was enjoying it more than I enjoyed Odyssey on a repeat. Bowser's Fury is way easier to go back to. And it has the advantage of, like, forcing you to bounce between levels so you don't just stay in one area and complete it the way you probably will in Sunshine, and you almost certainly will in Odyssey. I don't know. Odyssey's just a weird one to return to. I think the entire experience is 10 times better if you got to the kingdoms through Peach's Castle. Like that end area you unlock the Mushroom Kingdom. I think if that had been a hub world that you returned to a few times throughout the game, my enjoyment would be like 10 times better, because it would feel like an interconnected place.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the hub world, and that is also why, like, I fell off of Super Mario Galaxy 2 much faster than Super Mario Galaxy, because while they're both excellent games, you're right in that hub world really adds something for me, at least. Yeah, it just feels more cohesive when there's a place to return to.
The Galaxy hub world, I love the Star Observatory.
The observatory.
And then Galaxy 2
there was none in 2. It was just a level select, and that was a huge...
No, there is a hub world in 2. There's Starship Mario. You can walk around it, but it's horrible, and it is it doesn't get the job done. It's too small. Yeah, it just doesn't...
I mean, but I don't know. To me, that's kind of like saying your Odyssey spaceship is your hub
Exactly.
world.
I was going to say that. It's not quite that small in Galaxy 2, and it also does evolve throughout the game much more meaningfully than the Odyssey does. Is that what the ship is called? The Odyssey?
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I think if the Odyssey had like a bigger interior, that also would have solved this problem. If it had a huge interior that you had a reason to go to every once in a while. But I just don't... I wish they'd done a hub world. There was so little reason not to. Load times are inconsequential on the Switch.
I guess what I will say, though, is the first time playing that game, the levels feel so magical you don't really care. But I can certainly see how on a second time you'd be like, okay, this does feel like it's missing a little something.
Nothing I said today applies to the first time playthrough. That first playthrough is an amazing experience. It's just Mario games to me, returning to them has always been a pretty special experience as well.
Yeah.
And Odyssey did not hold up terribly well in that regard. A lot of, like, some of the kingdoms felt downright unfinished playing the game this way. Like, literally just getting enough moons to leave and then leaving. Like, Lake Kingdom felt terrible. I had enough moons and I was out of there. And I'm not doing speedruns on this. I did a couple of jumps that I knew how to do because I thought it would be fun. But it really just, you spend no time in some of these levels until the post game. It really feels like Odyssey doesn't even start until you beat Bowser in that way. But when I played through it the first time, I did just go off the beaten path and explore a lot more because I knew I was going to 100% that game.
Yeah, and especially because of how many collectibles there are in Odyssey, it's just it's harder to return to in that sense too, because people can run through Super Mario 64, run through Sunshine, and not have it take forever.
Yeah. That's another problem, is that if I play through Sunshine, there's a good chance I get every shine and I skip the blue coins entirely because I think they're terrible and not very fun to do. And Odyssey essentially has blue coins, but they just are moons now. There are a lot of moons in that game that ask no more of you than a blue coin did in Super Mario Sunshine. I think it felt good on a first playthrough that the moons were just everywhere. I felt like I was constantly being rewarded.
Dopamine.
Yeah, but on a second playthrough, you kind of notice the cracks in that. Like, I get the same amount of reward for running through this platforming sequence and fighting an enemy at the end of it that takes like maybe 5 minutes to do, as I get for walking around in the world and, oh, there's one literally just sitting here in the world, that there's no puzzle, there's no nothing, it's just a moon sitting out for some reason, and there's a bunch of those. And so it devalues them a little.
Plus for me, when especially again, talking about a first playthrough, not knowing what lies ahead, I was way more motivated to collect all the moons because Mario games are notorious for having all these secrets and stuff. So without that kind of motivation of, ooh, what's next being there, collecting all the kind of more mundane moons is a lot less enticing. Right.
And it also was like, I actually don't like the majority of the kingdoms, I don't think. I don't really care for Wooded Kingdom. I don't care for Wooded Kingdom. Lake Kingdom is so brief. I do like it, but it's so brief. Cloud Kingdom might as well not exist. It only exists for a boss fight. Lost Kingdom only exists for a boss fight. Moon Kingdom is basically just one platforming segment and then a boss fight. There's very little in Moon Kingdom. There's a lot of, like, nothing going on in this game that you don't notice the first time because you're so excited to see these new areas. Like Moon Kingdom, for instance, it drops you in, and it's the first area. It has this moon gravity. It's the first area that has this really unique mechanic you're engaging with the entire time. And the first thing they have you do is go in a cave with normal gravity. And you play through that cave. And then you leave the cave, and you have normal gravity. And you're like, all right, I'm going to go fight Bowser, and maybe it'll be interesting because it'll have this gravity. And the second you walk into the church, you have normal gravity again. They don't do anything with it at all. And that didn't bother me at launch, but stuff like that does not hold up to scrutiny. I also am like a more critical eye now than I was 7 years ago.
Well, it's interesting just going back to this game because obviously when we first talked about it, we were over
enamored.
The moon. We were
crazy.
We both
I
were.
Really liked it, but I remember you describing it as like every second of playing this game is pure bliss or something like that.
I definitely felt that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was slightly colder than that, but I did love it. It was at the time my favorite 3D Mario, and I just don't know if it is anymore.
But revisiting, especially 6-7 years later, a lot can change. Standards have changed. Our opinions have changed. So.
It does kind of look like a 7-year-old game at this point. It is not as
that's
shiny
crazy
and
to
new
think about
as it was.
I haven't played it in years and years, so I mean, it has. It's been over half a decade since Odyssey, which is unbelievable to me.
Yeah. Still a great game. If you haven't played it, absolutely play it. But
one of the Switch's best games.
Yeah, for sure.
Still wager.
Which I figure we're going to have to do of Switch's best games here once they announce the new console. We gotta
finally.
Jump into that.
You know what? They're just never going to do it. Just to spite me, they're just never going to release a Switch 2. I'm
the
convinced
Wii
at this
U
point.
2.
Nintendo just goes third party to spite me or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they would.
What's crazy is I did leave the playthrough wanting to play more Mario Odyssey. I do want, like, I might actually 100% it again. It might just be a game.
That gameplay is so, it just feels incredible.
It might be a game that just when you return to it, you have to do it. You got to do the whole thing. It's not a game you can do a quick playthrough of and have a satisfying experience, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting. It was fun revisiting Mario Odyssey with a more critical eye.
Yeah.
Especially now that we have newer Mario to compare it to, like Bowser's Fury. You know, we know even further now what Mario could be.
Yeah.
And it colors that opinion even more.
Bowser's Fury feels like such a... I mean, it does feel like a prototype because it almost is. But it does feel like the perfect halfway point to me. You can't do the boot out system anymore. So they just make you leave. They give you a reason to go do something else physically by yourself. And then when you come back, the level has changed its shape. And there's new challenges. That is so good. That is brilliant because it also... Because another thing I struggled with is, like, if you're doing a hub world, you have to have a reason to go there. And just being that you're encouraged to bounce between levels instead of just staying in one forever. I think that's just a better way to play these games, too. It's a more satisfying. That's what I always do when I replay Sunshine. I do not stay in Pianta Village for 7 straight shines. I don't stay in Bianco Hills for 7 straight shines. I bounce around because it's just, all the levels are so fun. That's the other thing. Every shine at least feels substantial in Super Mario Sunshine. Whereas so many of the moons are just nothing burgers.
Like, with the increased volume of moons, that was kind of inevitable.
I love having that many collectibles around, but next time I hope they do... honestly, it would have been better if they were blue coins. And they just did blue coins better. Because the problem with blue coins in Sunshine is that there's no way to find them all. Like, a lot of them are just very, very obscure, and some of them are only available in certain missions. And if you just give the same level of hint you would give for a moon, but it's not a moon, so that it doesn't feel kind of devaluing the bigger moons, I think you have something there.
Yeah. Well, we shall see whenever the next 3D Mario releases.
Yeah, probably next year.
Switch 2. Yeah.
Probably next year, and I'm very excited for it, because I am hungry for a 3D Mario lately.
I'm hungry for new Nintendo hardware.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you all for listening. You can follow us at Podcast Game Talk on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Please like, rate, and review us on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast services you use. Click the link in the description to join our Discord and talk to us there. Thank you, Connor and Mike.
See you guys next week.
See you next week. Bye.